The last part of lecture 7 is going to be about hearing, and we're going to be looking at the various structures of the ear. First, the ear actually has two sensory functions. Of course, you know the ear is responsible for detecting sound, but it actually is responsible for the detection of equilibrium as well. To have equilibrium is to maintain a balance. So there are two types of equilibrium in the when we talk about the body. There is a static equilibrium, so that would be like standing still, not moving, and not falling over. That would be a type of static equilibrium. And then there is another type called dynamic equilibrium. So that's when you're moving at a constant speed. So let's say you're driving at 100 kilometers per hour on a highway, then your body is going to be in a static in a dynamic equilibrium. So if your car speeds up or slow down, then you're going to be going out of the dynamic equilibrium, and that's going to be detected by structures within your ear. The sensory receptors in the ear consist of a type of cells called the hair cells, and the hair cells would be a type of mechanoreceptors. And you might remember earlier in the lecture, mechanoreceptors are going to be stimulated by changes in pressure or body movement. Right, so typically that's what a hair cell looks like. There are these finger-like projections. Those are the hair, and the rest of the cell body is typically embedded in some kind of rigid structure. And these hair cells are going to be bathed in some kind of fluid. So when there is movement in the fluid caused by changes in pressure or body movement, then it will cause these cells, these finger-like projections, to move back and forth, and that would in turn open ion channels that will result in a depolarization, which then, of course, triggered the calcium to come in, and the calcium will push the neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft, creating an action potential in the afferent nerve, which would then take the signal to your CNS. Let's label the parts of the ear in our course pack first. So there is the diagram that we're going to label now. So your ear is separated into external ear, middle ear, and inner ear. And here H is including all the parts that is going to be part of the external ear. So for the most part, the external ear is what you can see and you kind of have access to, so to speak. And so we have the actual ear, okay, right here, and that is made up of cartilage, and so there's not a lot of blood vessels going in there. So if you ever injure your ear, it might take a long time for it to heal. And we have a special name for an ear. We call it the pinna. Pinna. At the bottom here, we have the earlobe. The earlobe can be attached or detached depending on your genetic makeup. And the ear is shaped in a way that it allows sound to be funneled into the ear canal. And so this portion here, that is the ear canal. And of course, we have a special name for it. It's called the tympanic, it's called the auditory canal. Auditory canal. Auditory means sound, and it will direct the sound all the way towards your eardrum. Okay, so the pinna and the auditory canal is part of your external ear. Let me zoom in a little bit here for you. This is your eardrum, and the eardrum is a membrane that will vibrate when it detects sound. It's kind of like the opposite of a speaker, right? So the speaker produces sound by having a membrane that vibrates. This actually takes sound energy and convert it into movement. And so this is the eardrum, which is also known as the tympanic membrane. If you rupture the tympanic membrane, then you won't be able to detect sound anymore. You might need to have a cochlear implant to fix that problem. On the medial side of the tympanic membrane, there are going to be three bones, three small bones, and these three small bones are going to act as a lever system that will help amplify the sound. Okay, so these bones collectively, they are known as ossicles. Okay, so you have three ossicles, and we will learn their names on the next diagram. And also, there is another tube here. This tube actually connects to your nasal pharynx, and it is typically closed, but whenever you swallow, it's going to open. Anytime it opens, it will help equalize the pressure with the surrounding. Okay, so this is called the Eustachian tube, or more simply, the auditory tube. Okay, and the function is to equalize the pressure with the surrounding environment. You might have experienced your ear plugging up as you are going up in an elevator, or if you're on a plane. That's because as you go higher and higher up, the pressure in the surrounding area is going to drop, so you have pressure building up in your head, right? And when you swallow, it opens up the Eustachian tube, and it lets out the extra pressure that's building up in your head, and so you will hear the little pop sound, and you will feel a little bit better. But then again, as the plane continue to ascend, right, the pressure will build up again, and so you will have to swallow to open this up again. People say chewing gum helps. It's not really the chewing gum part that's helping, but chewing gum makes you salivate and swallow more often, right? And the swallowing action is what's opening the tube, and that's what's helping you. So the ossicle tympanic membrane and the Eustachian tube is part of your middle ear. And over here, you have your inner ear. Okay, so the inner ear has this snail shell looking structure called a cochlea, and we will be labeling that shortly. Okay, so there we go. External, middle, and inner ear. Moving on, this is taking a closer look at the middle ear and the inner ear. So you can see we have the tympanic membrane once again, and that's shown right here. That is the tympanic membrane converting sound energy into movements. Right? So as sound strikes the tympanic membrane, it's going to move back and forth. Tympanic membrane. Okay, and I can write the function for you here. Convert sound energy into movements. Okay, and on the medial side of the tympanic membrane, it is connected to one of the three ossicles. So this is one of the ossicles. I'm just going to use a different color for the next one, different shade of green maybe. There is the second one, and there is the third one. Okay, the third one. So these ossicles each have names. The first one is called the molleus. Second one is called the incus. And the last one, C, is pointing at the stapes. Okay, so molleus is connected to your tympanic membrane, and the stapes is connected to a membrane here that we'll get to in a second, and incus is in between. So the function of the ossicles is to amplify sound. Okay, so ossicles, they amplify sound. Okay, and they also transfer the movements of the tympanic membrane to the inner ear, okay, specifically to this membrane, which is called the oval window. Okay, we're gonna get to that in a bit. You can't really see the oval window too clearly here because the stay piece is kind of covering it. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of the outline here. Okay, and that is the oval window. Okay, I'm gonna skip down here for a second. If you remove the stay piece, then you can see the oval window much better. Okay, it's a membrane. All right, oval window. So before we talk more about that, there are another set of names for the Mollius, Incus, and Stapes. Let me just quickly show you that in the PowerPoint slides. So for the outer ear, we have the pinna, the auditory canal. You can read through these yourself. It's pretty self-explanatory. And in the middle ear, we just explain what the tympanic membrane is for, as well as the ossicles. And the ossicles, these are the names that we wrote down, but they are also they have like a common name that is named after the object that they resembles. So the Mollius looks like a hammer, Incus looks like an anvil, and the stapes looks like a stirrup. And so, you know, the Mollius hammer, Incus looks like an anvil. Anvil is the thing that the blacksmith use, right, to forge various stuff, I guess. And stape is resemble a stirrup, which is the thing that you put your feet on when you ride a horse or when you give birth in some cases. So let's label that in the diagram. We have the Mollius, which is also known as the hammer, right? Hammer, and this one is also known as the anvil, and this is also known as stirrup. Okay. A couple other things. We have the Eustachian tube once again. Eustachian tube is right here, connects to the nasopharynx to help equalize pressure with the surrounding. Eustachian tube. That's a A right there. ACHIAN. It equalize pressure with the surrounding. Okay, with the surroundings. And it's normally closed, but it will open when you swallow. F is just pointing at this space here. This space is just called the tympanic cavity. Okay, nothing special. Now we're gonna move closer to the snail shell looking thing here. That would be part of your inner ear. So here we see the oval window again, and pressing on the oval window is this this ossicle here, the stapes or stirrup, whichever one you prefer. And so the snail shell looking structure here is called the cochlea, and is primarily a bony structure. Okay, so it's hard, and inside the cochlea is where you will have hair cells that would detect sound. So cochlea. Now this whole bone, in fact, it's also a bony structure over here, and there are only two kind of soft spots on this thing, and one of them is the oval window. The other one is this one over here called the round window. Okay, round window. Let me just label that for you. Okay, so within this bony structure, within the cochlea, it's filled with fluid, and what happens is when the tympanic membrane causes the ossicles to vibrate, then the stapes will push in to the oval window. So when you push into the oval window, that's going to create some kind of a shock wave, a pressure change that would then go into the cochlea and then it's going to cause the fluid within to increase in pressure, and so we must have a way to relieve some of this pressure, and the pressure is going to be relieved at the round window. Okay, so anytime the Stapy push in to the oval window, the round window is gonna bulge out, and then when the Stapy kind of retracts from the oval window, then the round window will go back inside. So the oval window is for transferring the movement into pressure inside the liquids of the cochlea, whereas the round window is for relieving pressure that is building up inside the cochlea. Now, over here on the left side, we have 3 tubes, and these tubes are going to be responsible for detecting head movements. So there is the lateral tube here. There is the posterior tube, and there's one more over here. It is called the anterior tube. Okay, so collectively these 3 tubes, they're actually not called tubes. They're called semi-circular, half circles, right? Semicircular canals. Okay, and you would have the anterior semicircular canal. I'm just gonna put SC for short, not enough space. And the if you think about like a room, right? Okay, so like this is a room, and this is the floor, and then you're kind of standing like this. Okay, looking at the wall here. Okay, so this green semicircular canal is going to be parallel to this wall. Okay, and so anytime you nod your head as in saying yes, then the fluid in the anterior semicircular canal is going to move, and there are hair cells at the base that would detect those motion. So anterior semicircular canal is going to be stimulated by your head nodding, okay, saying yes. This one here, the one at the back, the posterior semicircular canal, is going to be parallel to this wall here, and so the motion that will stimulate it would be when you tilt your head to the side. Okay, when you tilt your head to the side, or if you're doing a cartwheel. Okay, so cartwheel is like this, right? You rotate this way. Okay, so kind of like this, I guess, right? It's hard to draw like that, but then if you're rotating like that, then you will stimulate the posterior semicircular canal. Okay, so posterior semicircular canal. Okay, so tilting your head sideways as in saying meh. Okay, so that would be the posterior semicircular canal. And finally, the one that is at the bottom here, the pink one, that is going to be parallel to the ground, and so you will stimulate that whenever you shake your head sideways. Okay, as in saying no. So this would be the lateral semicircular canal, and you will stimulate it when you shake your head as in saying no. Connecting the cochlea and the semicircular canal is this middle portion here. It's called the vestibule, and the vestibule is responsible for detecting acceleration. Okay, detects acceleration. So acceleration is anytime you are knocked out of equilibrium. So you might be speeding up, slowing down, you might be falling, and there are 2 structures here that would help you detect the acceleration. Okay, the top one here is called the utricle, and that will detect horizontal acceleration. So as in the car, you're speeding up or slowing down, you step on the brake all of a sudden, and you feel that deceleration. That would be the utricle. That's sensing it. The other one is called the saccule, and that is responsible for detecting vertical acceleration. So this is when you are falling. Okay, if you're on a roller coaster ride and then you're going down really fast, and you feel that acceleration, that would be the saccule. Okay, so together the the vestibule and the cochlea is going to send the signal to the brain. Cochlea will be sending the information to the temporal lobe, where the auditory information are processed. The vestibule containing the information for acceleration is going to get sent to the cerebellum, where balance is going to where it's responsible for maintaining balance and posture. So there is going to be a nerve that would send these information there. I'm just going to try to draw it here for you. There's going to be a nerve that comes out here at the back, and it's a combined nerve that contains both information from the vestibule and the cochlea. So this is called the vestibulo-cochlear nerve. Okay, so there is your inner ear and all the structures associated with it. So that's pretty much it for the ear. Everything else in the PowerPoint slides are basically what we've talked about, and it's pretty self-explanatory, so you can go ahead and read that. This shows you kind of the location of everything in relation to the external stuff that we can see. So the inner ear, the snail shell, the cochlea is actually kind of below where the eye is, and you can see the eustachian tube here. It's connected to the nasopharynx, and it's going to help us equalize the pressure with the outside environment. Inner ear, we talk about that already, and again, you can read this on your own. This slide is worth talking about, though. Okay, within the cochlea, it's actually split into three separate channels. And one of the channels is going to be responsible for sending the shock wave in, and then the other one is for sending it out. Maybe I can draw this for you in another diagram to help you see visualize this a little bit better. So the cochlea is, we see it as like a snail shell looking thing, right? And then there is the oval window where the stapes presses on, and then there is the round window for relieving the excess pressure. So if I were to unroll this thing, it would actually look something like this. Okay, it's going to be unrolled like that. Okay, so the tip here corresponds to the tip when it's all rolled up, and then there are going to be three channels to it. Okay, there's one here, there's another one, and then there's one in the middle. So at the top here, this is where the oval window is, and you're going to have the stapes pressing on it. Okay, so there's going to be the channel that goes all the way in, and it's going to have fluids in it, and then at the bottom here, there's going to be another channel. Okay, and in between, this is where you will find a structure called the organ of Corti, and that's where the hair cells are going to be embedded. Okay, embedded like this, with a little bit of the finger-like projections that we saw earlier. Okay, it's basically like all over the place, but I'm just going to draw a few for simplicity's sake. And over here, again, that's the round window. So anytime the sound waves causes the vibration, the stape will press on the oval window, and that will send some shock wave in the fluid. And depending on the frequency of the sound, if it's a high-pitched sound, then it tends to turn around quite quickly. If it's a low-pitched sound, then it tends to travel a little bit farther. Okay, so it will travel here, and then eventually it's going to turn around, and then the pressure is going to be relieved from the round window. And depending on where it turns around, that section of the hair cells are going to be stimulated, and then send signals to the temporal lobe, and that's going to be interpreted as a particular pitch. Okay, and so you know, if you put a lot more hair cells here, then you can imagine this as kind of playing the piano, right? By pressing on the different keys, you're going to have the different pitch, and depending on where you turn around, you're going to be quote unquote pressing on those hair cells. Okay, but this whole thing is going to be all rolled up into the shape of the cochlea, and you can see it a little bit better in this PowerPoint diagram. Okay, so the blue channels is for the sound energy to dissipate, and the red is for the signal to be coming in. So you can see the state piece pressing in on the oval window, and the sound will travel through these channels, and then eventually it's going to turn back, and it's going to come back out in the blue direction, and ultimately relieving the pressure in the round window. And in between the vestibular canal and the tympanic canal, in the middle is the cochlear duct, where you will find the organ of Corti, and that's where the hair cells are going to be located. This is a summary slide that talks about basically how the year works, and it's a good one to read through yourself. And you can see here, it's basically what I was trying to draw, right? The sound wave would come in the vestibular duct, and then it will turn around and go into the tympanic duct, but not before stimulating the hair cells in the organ of Corti. Okay. And that's it for the lecture 7. Now, thank you for watching.